Hello and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I am Akash, and in this series of a program, we are going to talk about internal security and related to India's security, and in also not in terms of India only, but also in terms of the global aspect. And to join me on this talk, I've got our senior correspondent, Vicky Nanjappa. Vicky, welcome to the very first episode of Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you, Akash. A pleasure being on this.
So, Vicky, we have had these conversations in the past also on our platform in terms of, how terrorism is a reoccurring problem, not just for India, but now for the globe also, in terms of, many terror organizations that are creeping up, not just in the Central Asian part, but also in different parts of the world. And to counter that, a few years ago, all of the nations, they come along and they have started to, try to curb terrorism across the world by, choking the terror funding, the money that flows into it. And that is what we're going to talk about tonight, because what we are discussing on this show, Beyond the Headline today in our very first episode, is about a very big and a very prestigious summit that is going to happen in New Delhi. The first one happened in Paris in 2018, then the second one happened in Melbourne in 2019, and due to the COVID, the further summit could not take place, but the summit which we're talking about, it is called No Money for Terror. So that summit is going to take place here in India, in New Delhi, and it is being headed by our Honorable Home Affairs Minister Amit Shah. So, Vicky, how important is this summit in terms of if we talk about India?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on the show, Akash. And speaking of the importance of this, it's extremely important, because we are not any longer dealing with, terrorism incidents that are isolated to only India. One. So, for one instance, if I can give you, is that, the Khalistan problem which is happening. Actually, it's not really gained the traction that it had to get. Again, they would have hoped it was gained. But it is very, very strong in countries like UK, US, Canada, all these places. So, it's kind of an irritant, that, they keep, having these referendums, and, it starts becoming a very, what is that? An irritant in bilaterals, actually. One. So, in that context, what I mean to say is that, considering that no incident of terror is isolated, say in the case of the Islamic State, there is always some, handler in Syria, or, somebody sitting. So it is working both, on the ground as well as on cyberspace. So in that context, if you look at it, thing is, it is a very helpful summit for us going forward in terms of global cooperation when we have to fight terror. And having said that, it is also a very prestigious thing that, we have this conference here in India. One thing. It's like, considering it is in India, we are going to be the ones who are going to shape the kind of global fight, the global fight against terror. Considering, we have faced it quite a lot and continue to face it on a daily basis in certain parts.
Correct. Very true, Vicky, because like if we talk about India's past, so India has always been very vocal about in terms of terrorism, and we have always said this thing that, terrorism is not just bound to just one region. It has no boundaries. It can, spread to multiple nations, and in the past in a decade or in 2 decades, we have seen that terror has no boundaries. It can go to any country, and with cropping up of these lone wolf mentality of the terrorist, creating little bit of a nuisance in a big city, maybe like London or Budapest, or so all these things have now culminated what India was talking about like maybe 20, 30 years ago. Now it has all culminated. And what do you see that how will India, shape this kind of a summit? because like it happened in Paris, we know that, the terror attacks that happened by ISIS in Paris, and then we know Melbourne, the second summit took place. But, this summit coming to India, it definitely shows us that, India is one of the biggest, spokesperson of anti-terror activities across the world, and has always been saying this thing, that, there should be a curb on this. But how do we curb it? Because like the summit has happened, the discussions have taken place, but how do we curb this? How do we, as the summit say, that there should be no money for terror? But how do you stop this money inflow into terror organizations who keep on, doing these kind of stuff?
So to begin with, the first part of your question, when they said that, actually the world, in fact, when I say the world, I mean the United States and, some of the Western countries, they've been very late to, react to this problem. Like, if you remember when the Balakot airstrike happened, we've been telling the US that, there are these groups like, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, and all in different forms which were in Pakistan, because we were facing terrorism on a very regular basis. And the world started taking terrorism seriously only after 9/11, actually. They actually realized that there is a problem there. And, other countries can also face it or have faced it. That is one. Now, saying that, the very theme which says, no money for terror, this the third ministerial, which is going to be held. What happens in every attack? Money is a very important aspect. It may change a little when it comes to lone wolf terrorism, these people who get radicalized online. That will come to next, actually. So when they're operating as groups, what tends to happen is that, it is the money flow. See, some are inspired by the ideology, many are inspired by the money. And, to carry out an operation on a very big scale, it does cost a lot of money. Like, if you take the Coimbatore blast this time, the most important trail they have to find is the money trail, where he procured, how he managed to procure this one. And in that respect, if you look at it, the thing is the Indian agencies have done a very good job in Kashmir when it comes to, if you see that Zahur Watali getting, arrested, these are all the guys who are channelizing the funds there. So when the money flow goes down entirely, and that is when, the thing, what the problem also goes down. So in that respect, if you look at it, now, say the money which has been coming into Kashmir has not necessarily only been through Pakistan. Okay, it has been routed to a different country, and then from there it comes. So in this conference, if we find more global cooperation in that front, if their agencies are also alert to the kind of financial transactions that are happening, and very importantly, there is intelligence cooperation between all these countries. So, the flow of money can stop there. And India has got numerous cases. In fact, in recent times itself, where, such big flows of money which have been coming in, routed from Pakistan into another country, maybe into Australia, and from there when it comes, then what tends to happen is that the thing is, you're able to stop the money flow. Okay, you're able to stop the money flow. And that is what this conference, will be the primary objective of this conference, is to discuss ways on better cooperation. It's not like these countries do not know how to, trace the money trail, but it's very important that, there's a lot of seriousness that is involved, when you're sharing intelligence and, you're telling them that this is the money source, please probe it and all that. So if you cut out the money source, these Hawala channels and these illegal channels, sometimes they are just remittances saying, for some charitable cause and all that. And if the intelligence sharing gets strong, which I'm sure it will after this conference, I'm sure it is quite strong at the moment, then what happens is you can curb terrorism to a large extent. And now on that thing also, now you say this, the Bitcoin, and how the cyber criminals are operating. So that is a very big challenge, actually. I wouldn't say any agency has actually been able to crack it so well. So on the cyberspace is what, is what all these nations put together work on. So that, once that flow is cut off, terrorism automatically starts waning.
Right, Vicky. And yes, you very aptly put up that, Bitcoin is one of the most recent, trade routes, as we can say, that these terrorists are using, because, it has no physical form, and definitely can be used anywhere across the globe without any boundaries and everything. So that of course poses a lot of threat. But though giving credit where credit is due, Indian government has tried to put some checks in terms of bitcoins flowing in to the people, somebody who's receiving Bitcoin and all those kind of things that are happening. They have tried to put some kind of a check on it so that they can know that who is transacting through these Bitcoins. But Vicky, very interesting. I think one also that, in terms of this big summit about anti-terror activities taking place, and but before that there was another thing that in October of this year, India held two global events. One was the Interpol annual general meeting that happened in Delhi, and of course there was a special session of the UN anti-terrorism committee that happened both in Mumbai and Delhi. And after that, this kind of a summit which talks about terrorism and how to stop the funding of terrorism in India is taking place. So what message is this sending us to India in terms of the globe the world sending a message to India, is that we are standing with you in terms of the terror activities? And would it actually trickle down to how Pakistan is supporting terror organizations? Because we have seen in the past that though US do condemn in words in terms of saying that Pakistan should keep a check or should stop these terror outfits that are running on its soil, but on the other it sends its F-16 aircrafts to Pakistan in the garb of saying that it's just to help one of its allies.
Yeah, right. I mean, these three are, which you begin with by saying that this is going to be the third conference, which is going to focus very specifically on the problem of terrorism. One. While that being said, it also goes on to show that this government's actually zero tolerance towards terror. One thing, it has always been the policy of this government ever since they formed in 2014. That being said, another thing which I would like to add is, it is actually a very, very big thing that these such conferences on such large scale are taking place in India. Considering, around 25 years back, nobody was even willing to acknowledge that there was a problem of terrorism in this country.
Right.
Although, we saw the way Punjab police under KPS Gill beat down Khalistan forces, for which 1,792 policemen had sacrificed their life. So that is, so the conference happening here itself is that, the world is taking India very seriously on this front. They have started acknowledging that, we have a zero tolerance policy towards terror, no matter what, whether it is, Islamic terror or, left-wing terrorism or radicalization for that matter, or, terror funding. So that is a big, big acknowledgement, I would say. That is one.
I'm asking you, Vicky, that in terms of when we talk about the US role in terms of acknowledging anti-terror activities that are happening in Pakistan, how do you see that? Because US has played this very diplomatically in terms of when it comes to terrorism in the Indian subcontinent. I'm not going to call it and dignify it as the South Asia or the Southeast Asia. I'll call it the Indian subcontinent. And over here, what we have seen is that the role of US has been very diplomatic when it comes to India and Pakistan. On one hand, it always, when maybe Balakot or Pathankot or maybe something like that, or even to the extent of Mumbai terror attacks that happened here in India, so US has always been, has always done a lip service in terms of telling India that, okay, yes, Pakistan is, there are a lot of terror camps that are happening, that are running from the soil of Pakistan. It tells Pakistan that, yes, you should, stop these terror camps that are being operated on your soil. But on the other hand, the same America, then sends its F-16 to Pakistan and tell them that, it is for their own safety. And those F-16s are then used against India. and one of them which was shot down by one of our very brave pilot of the Indian Air Force. So how do you see that the role of America in, because to be honest, when it comes to geopolitics, there are only like 2 or 3 big players. It's China, it's Russia, it's United States of America. So you see these countries as aligning with the nations, should align with the nations who are facing these kind of problem, but we don't see that now. When would that change?
That actually, what had happened is, in the previous term, when Donald Trump was president, actually, that distance had already started. Like he's saying, we are not going to fund you all anymore, all that. So that distance had happened. Now, suddenly this F-16 thing happening, you also should look at it in the context of the growth of China out there in the region. That is one. And their proximity towards Pakistan and the number of projects they are doing together and the amount of arms supply that is happening from China to Pakistan. That is one thing. So US would look at it in that context, that a little bit cozying up to Pakistan so that to keep the Chinese dominance under check. So I would have a look at that. But yes, definitely there is one thing is that there has been a lot of lip service in the past, be it Mumbai 2611 or be it Pathankot. Okay, and so, those kind of things, yes, I don't think the US has done enough on that front, when it comes to, having a greater say out here in the region when it comes to, terrorism, that, when we are talking about our Kashmir issue, there are representatives there, who come and speak about human rights violations, just completely, closing their eyes, to the amount of security forces we have lost there due to, that extreme amount of terrorism which happens there. Yes, I would say that US role would change gradually, more and more. That it would change because they have started understanding what the problem is. That is one. They don't meddle too much on our issues there when it comes to Kashmir. If you see post-declaration Article 370, there was no official line taken by the Donald Trump administration against it or anything of that sort. That is because it is our internal matter. Where the US also, or for that matter, any other country, they should actually learn to differentiate is that, certain things are our internal issue. One, okay, Article 370 is our internal issue, one thing. They should also realize that, post a Pathankot attack, we reserve the right to hit them, one. We reserve the right to hit them. So that is where we don't want the meddling there. The US role would be, well appreciated is, if there is more sharing of information, there's more sharing of information. And it's not like they have not exactly supported us. When we wanted to, declare this Masood Azhar as a global terrorist, the US did back us. It was only China that kept shooting it down, finally. So on certain fronts, the US has changed a lot. But if you look at the F-16s, I would just purely look at it as a move by the US to, kind of curb the Chinese dominance over Pakistan.
Right, Vicky, and very aptly you picked up the issue of China also. But China, on one hand, has always shot down India on the UN when we have tried to declare certain terrorist organization or certain terrorists and try to pass a motion against them. So can India ever can India ever think that China is actually serious in terms of the terrorism that is taking place in the Indian subcontinent?
No, I wouldn't say that they are serious at all about it. That is one. Because they have a different goal altogether. They are more on that expansion. What is that mode basically? So what they call as their one China policy, where they say all these places belong to us. That is one thing. So no, they actually the one thing which I would see that why China would not go against Pakistan, which keeps sending in its terrorists here, is that it sees India as a very, very big force, okay, and they do not want a force as big as this in this subcontinent. I mean, in this region, basically, they would like to be the only dominating force. So, any problem that is happening to us, I don't think I see them interfering or backing us. I would say in the near future, because it's a rising power, India. That is one thing. It is. the fifth largest economy in the world today, and it is, only progressing. So all those things don't gel too well with India, one thing. And, our posturing, with the Quad, okay, our posturing with the US, the kind of, the growth that India has seen in terms of, be it our foreign policy, or, be it our technology or our firepower or in science and things like that. So they see us as a competitor, and that is why I wouldn't expect or, even think that, China would ever back us in these kind of resolutions that we want to pass in the UN, or, give Pakistan a dressing down maybe, to shut down those terror camps.
Right, right. Vicky, on a parting note, what do you expect out of this summit that is going to happen in the coming few days? So, what do you reckon? What would be the outcome of this summit?
See, the outcome definitely would be, towards more cooperation. One, more cooperation, because as I said, every country's agencies have their own capability of, tracking down terror, all these things. Okay, one thing. But definitely, after that Interpol conference and then the special session of the Anti-Terrorism Committee of the UN, which was held in Mumbai and Delhi, that one thing is, I see that there is a pattern which is happening. And, increasingly, what is happening is the world has started realizing that, what India has been saying all these years about the threat of terrorism is actually real. That is one thing. And now, if you want the world to be a peaceful place, considering the kind of the global scenario that we have, I mean, do we want one more added problem called terrorism in this? This is one thing. So ultimately, it would, result in a more, a progressive resolution on, pure intelligence sharing, which is, on which purely aims at, the Interpol meeting was focused again on, this one. What is that? Basically, cooperation. That is one. Okay. The world, I mean, we are now in a position today to shape how the world would, have to tackle terror, basically. That is one. We wouldn't want to want the world to be in a situation like how we were, say, 25 years back, where we only kept telling the world and nobody even acknowledged it. That is one. So today we are in a position to tell the world that this problem is real. And no longer are the attacks, confined to one local jurisdiction. It all has global ramifications. That is one. It is like, if some lone wolf has been funded out here and, he carries out an attack, say in Coimbatore, it can inspire someone in Paris, it can inspire someone in this one. So collectively, the need to fight terror and share intelligence more generously and, have much more cooperation cooperation in fighting this menace would be the final outcome of this third ministerial of the no money for terror conference.
Right, right. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Vicky, for joining me for the very first edition of Beyond the Headlines. And hopefully in the future, we will connect again on various other topics. And to all our viewers who watched our show, well, thank you very much for joining me and Vicky. And if you haven't subscribed to One India News YouTube channel as of yet, please do so that we get to know that you are watching our new presentation. And of course, feel free to comment below about your views about how India is now fighting terrorism in terms of viewing it as a global threat. Thank you very much, Vicky.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you so much.